This interview is brought to you in association with Rabobank.
Hello and welcome to another Rural Delivery online interview, where we speak to those who are shaping our primary sector's future direction. I'm Roger Bourne, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Andy West, Vice Chancellor at Lincoln University. Andy, thanks for speaking with us.
Look, it's a pleasure.
Andy, you just got back from Asia. What's that got to do with Lincoln?
Oh, well, I guess it's twofold. First of all, Asia's really going to be the destination for a lot of the merchandise exports out of this country. And also, obviously, we're going to have more and more tourists from Asia coming to visit New Zealand. So given that Lincoln works with the primary industries, including tourism, it's fundamental to actually have an appreciation and understanding of where consumers might be coming from. And second one, of course, is that we do educate a significant number of Asian students at Lincoln University. And we're always keen to maintain enrolments or grow enrolment. So we're always obviously looking to talk to your agents throughout Asia and also talk to counterpart universities.
What sort of courses do Asian students come to Lincoln for these days?
Well, we're all going to be land-based because that's all we offer anymore. But obviously we do general commerce, general science, those sorts of things, but we put them in the context of land-based examples. So you're going to learn your basic principles that you need to learn for various subjects at degree level, but it's going to be closed around land-based culture, if you want, or context. And in addition, obviously, we have some very specialist courses around, let's say, farm production, like the Diploma of Agriculture, or whatever. So, there's a continuum, but Asians coming to our university are coming because they want to be at a specialist land-based university.
Now, these guys and girls, are they going to stay in New Zealand and perhaps get some work experience here? Or are they going to go straight home? What sort of careers do you think that they're looking at?
I think, there's a reasonable number of international students come to New Zealand, irrespective of which institution they study at, and look to actually, become permanent residents and settle and work here. And I think that's a fantastic thing because, good people, a lot of cultural diversity for our country, a lot of skills that our country needs, and being trained in our tertiary institutions with respect to often things that are immediately useful to New Zealand. So, we're very pleased if we can make a contribution to New Zealand by attracting, educating a student, and then they go out and get a job, let's say, in the primary industries, because those industries are hungry for, well-educated people.
Stay or go, your alumni, I guess, are going to act as translators between New Zealand's primary sector, its food sector, and Asian markets, and perhaps even Asian capital, I suppose, over time.
Oh, definitely. And in fact, it's a great thing also to have alumni throughout, let's say, Asia or other parts of the world, not just Asia. But yeah, I mean, there will be. And one of the things that we really put to prospective students is that when you come to our university to study in the land-based industries, you should, if you're active about it, you should be able to form friendships and networks that will be global in the future and represent the global value chains in which you'll be working. So it's really useful to have. Let's say that you've graduated from Lincoln University and you've stayed in New Zealand for a job, but you've got friends and colleagues who you've made at university who are now working in the Asian value chain. So, over in China or let's say, or Malaysia or someone like that. Now, those linkages are really powerful. And the more of those that New Zealand can get, the better. Yeah,
that's awesome. Andy, you talked earlier about, you are now a land-based university. You've made that very clear. That's the sort of courses you're offering. How's that working? What's been the student response to that statement by Lincoln?
Yeah. Well, it's early days because we only really completed our qualifications reform at the very high level, let's say, a few months ago. Really completed it in terms of the masters and reforms there. We did the undergraduate a bit earlier. So what we're doing right now is we're monitoring student interest in our new qualifications very closely, and that interest we hope will translate into enrolments in 2015. Right now the interest appears to be pretty high, but I'm going to have to metaphorically touch wood here because you never really know what your conversion efficiency is going to be between interest being expressed and a binding enrolment by late February in 2015. So at this stage, we are pleased with the level of interest, but we've got to be realistic, and only time will tell.
I guess it'd be very easy to just view this as Lincoln going back to its roots, but that's not true. The university is changing. You are going to be a different place that operates in a different way over time. What parts of the old Lincoln brand that people might think of when they think of Lincoln University are still going to be there, and what are the new things that are going to colour how we view that brand, in 20, 30 years from now?
I don't want to make this sound wrong, but in fact, we're doing a lot of what we used to do, and we'll continue to do a lot of what we used to do. But all the time, we are reviewing and making sure that our courses are contemporary and they reflect the needs of New Zealanders and other students from overseas. And the reason for that, the reason that we remain true to a land-based core, the reason that we still offer a diploma in agriculture, for example, or a Bachelor of Agricultural Science, or a Bachelor of Commerce/Agriculture, is because the needs in the world around a rapidly growing food security crisis, the needs are strong. And so we think that we're well positioned, and we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you know what I mean, do all these changes and then suddenly find that you can't actually respond to the biggest international need, which is how do we provide food at an affordable price? And secondly, how do we provide enough food at all? And so we think that we're well positioned, and we absolutely want to have our flagship qualifications across all three faculties, etc., in our Telford division. We want those flagship qualifications to be stable, but all the time we are updating them to make sure that they are also contemporary. One of our new qualifications is the Bachelor of Agribusiness and Food Marketing. And so, for example, this reflects growing demand in New Zealand to produce premium products that are targeted at top-end consumers rather than continue to sell commodities. You're marketing top-end consumer products, and you've got to understand how value chains work to do that. So we do bring new stuff in, and we bring it in as we think the market is changing, but it's all land-based.
Now, speaking of value chains, you've promulgated a view that, in fact, the primary sector is, in fact, just the first step in a very long value chain that ultimately feeds the food and the fashion industry. And how does it look like trying to tie that together as a reality for young people today?
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily an easy thing. And what I'm really talking about here is the urban population, because, I guess maybe one could attract a lot of urban New Zealanders, let's say, for example, into the fashion industry and maybe elements of food technology or food marketing. But you've actually got to populate the whole value chain, because someone's got to produce the stuff in the first place, and you've got to process it, you've got logistics, shipping, distribution, before you get to the really sexy end of actually marketing, and positioning it and all that stuff. And so that is difficult, because most of the student growth in this country is going to come in the future from Auckland. That's where people are settling. It's where the population's growing fast. It's where every tertiary education institution is going to have a presence, even a campus in the future, to remain relevant to New Zealand. And so it's not such an easy sales job to go into a city where 500,000 people living there weren't born in New Zealand, and say to those people, hey, we've got the primary industries. It's a fantastic place to be. Did you know that you could retire, if you're a dairy farmer or even a sheep farmer, you could retire with $6 or $7 million in your bank account? Well, that's like asking, saying to some of those young people, hey, we'd like you to fly to the moon. Because they've got no idea, and it's no criticism of them, but they've got no idea how to translate, how to achieve that goal, and actually say, wow, I could retire with 7 or 8 mil. Well, how do I become a dairy farmer? Or how do I even own a dairy farm? So we've got to get that message across, and it's not how you do that and why you would do that. It's not just Lincoln's job, of course. The industries themselves, the primary industries are increasingly working together to target young people to say, we've got careers here, you need to understand what they are because they're very good ones.
Is this what's behind your partnership with St. Peter's and their dairy farm in Waikato, just down the road from that big thing we call Auckland?
Yes, it is. And it's also, that's part of the driving force. And it's also part of the driving force for our partnership with Northland College in Kaikoura. So a partnership with the Decile 1 school, partnership with the Decile 10 school, trying to achieve the same thing. Not only to help farming per se, but to attract young people into training and education in the primary industries, and that's one way to do it.
Speaking of partnership, Lincoln's evolving as a university. So is Lincoln as a town, particularly since there was going to be something in the middle of it called the Lincoln Hub. Can you tell us how that's working out? I see architects have now been appointed to look at the big picture here, but that's just not about a bunch of new buildings, is it? That is a fundamentally new way of looking at how all those partners work together.
Well, absolutely. Look, the buildings are, bricks and mortar are important, but they're not what it's about. What it's actually about are the intangibles and the ideas, the knowledge, the technologies, or whatever you want, created by really good collaborations between not only academics and scientists, but between industry, companies, and environmental regulators as well. And so what we've got to create in Lincoln is an exemplar of how well it can be done. Now, a hub is a hub. It's not a cluster. And what I mean by that is what we need more of at Lincoln as a township is we need more of the private sector. We need more companies locating around Crown Research Institutes in Lincoln University so they can work in partnership, as I've said, with scientists and academics and really create something more than we have now for the country and for internationally. So that's our number one objective. We want some of that knowledge to be used to help maintain, help actually introduce agricultural intensification inside environmental limits. So do it without really polluting rivers or lakes or whatever. And so the Lincoln Hub, ultimately Lincoln Cluster, one of its single most important tasks is to help New Zealand and other countries resolve the trade-off between wealth and environmental integrity in the primary industries. But beyond that, it's about spin-out companies, all sorts of really exciting things like that. So, yeah, I'm very excited about the Lincoln Hub and ultimately the Lincoln Cluster.
Oh, Andy, look, thanks very much for all of that. We've got to leave it there. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll come back to you at some other stage, and we can talk a little bit more about what those spin-outs are going to be, where they're going to go, what role Lincoln's going to have in that, and how that hub is going to make the difference that I think we all know it can.
Oh, look, I'd love to do that, and I think the time to have that sort of conversation, my advice to you would be probably about March next year.
All right, we'll look forward to it. We'll put it on the schedule. Thank you very much for your time again, Andy.
No problem at all.
This interview was brought to you in association with Rabobank.